I'm Samantha, 34, and I still can't believe what happened at our family Christmas last year. My mom had specifically promised that everyone would exchange only small, modest gifts due to financial difficulties. But when my niece and nephew unwrapped brand new iPhones while my kids got $20 gift cards, something inside me snapped. 10 months of family secrets, calculated revenge, and a truth that would tear our family apart followed, all because my perfect sister Rebecca once again got special treatment, and my mother once again lied to my face. If you're watching this and have ever felt like the forgotten child in your family, drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching from. Hit that subscribe button if you've ever suspected favoritism in your family too. Trust me, what happened next in this story might give you some ideas about standing up for yourself and your children. To understand why those iPhones hit me so hard, you need to know about our family dynamics. There's me, Samantha, my husband Greg, who's 36, and our two children Emma and Lucas, who are 10 and 8. Then there's my older sister Rebecca, 38, her husband Tyler, 39, and their children Zoe, 12, and Mason, 9. Our parents, Diana and Richard, are in their late 60s. From as early as I can remember, my mother Diana always favored Rebecca. When we were kids, Rebecca got the bigger bedroom, newer clothes, and more attention at school events. Diana would rush to Rebecca's softball games but conveniently had migraines during my choir performances. My father Richard was more balanced in his affection, but he tended to avoid conflict with my mother, so her favoritism went unchallenged. What makes this particularly frustrating is the financial situations of our families. Rebecca and Tyler both have corporate jobs with six-figure salaries. They live in an expensive neighborhood, drive luxury cars, and take lavish vacations, yet they constantly complain about money problems to our parents, who eagerly offer support. "We're just so stretched thin with the kids' activities," Rebecca would say, while planning their third vacation that year. "Mom, do you think you could help with Zoe's dance lessons? They're so expensive." And my mother would immediately open her checkbook. Meanwhile, Greg and I have genuinely struggled financially. 3 years ago, Greg's company downsized and he took a considerable pay cut to stay employed. I work part-time as a teacher's assistant, so I can be home when the kids finish school. We budget carefully, clip coupons, and our idea of a vacation is camping at the state park. But we've made a point of never asking my parents for financial help. I've always believed in standing on our own feet. "We'll figure it out," I would tell Greg when things got tight. I don't want to give my mother another reason to compare me unfavorably to Rebecca. Last Thanksgiving, about a month before the Christmas disaster, my mother announced that money was tight because they needed to repair the roof on their house. "I think we should all agree to do modest Christmas gifts this year," Diana suggested during dessert. "Nothing extravagant, maybe a $30 limit per person?" Everyone nodded in agreement, but I noticed Rebecca and my mother exchanging a look. At the time, I dismissed it. "That sounds perfect, Mom," I said, genuinely relieved. "The kids can focus on the meaning of Christmas instead of just the gifts." My mother smiled tightly. "Well, we don't want to disappoint the children too much. But yes, keeping things simple makes sense." Throughout December, I put significant thought into selecting gifts within the $30 budget. I found a vintage book about baseball for my dad, who loves the sport's history. For my mom, I purchased a handmade scarf from a local artisan. For Rebecca's family, I carefully selected items I knew they would like while strictly adhering to the budget. For my niece Zoe, I found a journal with a beautiful cover since she enjoys writing. For Mason, I bought a set of specialized Lego pieces to complement his collection. Emma and Lucas were surprisingly understanding about the modest Christmas. We talked about how the holiday wasn't just about receiving expensive gifts. "It's about being together," Emma said, repeating what we had discussed. If only I had known what was coming. Christmas Day arrived with light snow falling, creating the perfect holiday scene as we pulled up to my parents' colonial-style home. Colorful lights framed the windows, and a wreath adorned the front door. The aroma of my mother's traditional ham and sweet potato casserole filled the house as we entered. "Merry Christmas," my father called from the living room where he was stoking the fire. The children immediately ran to the tree, which was surrounded by presents. Despite the agreement to keep things simple, I noticed there seemed to be quite a few packages. Still, I didn't think much of it at the time. Rebecca and her family arrived 30 minutes later, making a grand entrance as usual. "Sorry we're late," Rebecca announced, not sounding sorry at all. "The traffic was terrible, and we had to stop for coffee." My mother rushed to take their coats. "No problem at all, dear. We wouldn't dream of starting without you." The early part of the day went smoothly. We enjoyed the elaborate dinner my mother had prepared, complete with her special cranberry sauce and 3 different desserts. The kids played together while the adults chatted. Greg talked sports with Tyler and my dad, while I helped my mother and Rebecca clean up after the meal. "So is everything okay with the roof?" I asked my mother as I dried a serving platter. She looked momentarily confused. "The roof? Oh, yes, all fixed now." Rebecca quickly changed the subject. "Mom, did you use different spices in the stuffing this year? It tasted amazing." Finally, it was time for the gift exchange. We gathered in the living room and my father distributed presents. The adults exchanged modest gifts first. I received a candle from Rebecca and a sweater from my parents that was clearly on sale. Greg got a tie and a wallet. We thanked everyone sincerely. When I handed my gifts to Rebecca and Tyler, Rebecca made a show of her appreciation. "Oh, how thoughtful, a coffee shop gift card," she said, barely looking at it. "We've been trying to cut back on expensive coffee, right, Tyler?" Next came the children's gifts. My mother handed packages to Emma and Lucas. They eagerly tore open the wrapping to find $20 gift cards to a bookstore and small candy selections. Their faces showed brief disappointment before they remembered their manners. "Thank you, Grandma and Grandpa," they said politely. "You're welcome, dears," my mother replied. "You can pick out whatever books you like." Then Rebecca stepped forward with 2 large, elegantly wrapped boxes. "These are for Zoe and Mason from Grandma and Grandpa," she announced. My niece and nephew ripped open the packages and let out screams of delight. Inside each box was the latest iPhone with protective cases and wireless earbuds. "Oh my God! Thank you, thank you, thank you," Zoe squealed, jumping up to hug my mother. Mason was already powering his phone up. "This is awesome. Can I download games right now?" I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. My children stood frozen, staring at their cousins' expensive gifts, then looking down at their modest gift cards. Lucas's lower lip trembled slightly. "Mom," Emma whispered, tugging at my sleeve. "I thought Grandma said no big presents this year?" I struggled to find words as rage and hurt bubbled up inside me. Greg placed a steadying hand on my back. "Diana," he said quietly, "I thought we all agreed on modest gifts this year." My mother waved dismissively. "Well, Zoe and Mason really needed phones for school and safety. Rebecca mentioned how all their classmates have them." Rebecca nodded vigorously. "It's true, they were practically the only kids without phones. It was becoming a real issue socially." I glanced at Tyler, who at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. The rest of the gift exchange continued in a blur. My children received a few more small items from their aunt and uncle, while Rebecca's kids got additional expensive accessories for their new phones. Later, while helping to clean up wrapping paper, I overheard my mother and Rebecca in the kitchen. "Did you see Sam's face when the kids opened the phones?" Rebecca chuckled. My mother laughed softly. "Well, she should understand that Zoe and Mason have different needs than her kids. Besides, we couldn't say no when you told us how much they wanted them." I froze, the reality sinking in. This wasn't a misunderstanding or an impulse purchase. They had planned this all along. The drive home was tense. Emma and Lucas sat quietly in the back seat, their gift cards clutched in their hands. "Why did Zoe and Mason get phones when we got gift cards?" Lucas finally asked. "Did we do something wrong?" My heart shattered. "No, honey," I managed to say. "You didn't do anything wrong." "It's not fair," Emma said, tears in her eyes. "Grandma said everyone was getting small presents." Greg reached over and squeezed my hand. "I know you're upset," he said quietly. "I am too, but maybe we should let it go for the kids' sake. Keep the peace." That night, after the children were in bed, I sat alone in our darkened living room, replaying the day's events. This wasn't just about the gifts. It was about the message my mother was sending to my children, that they were less valued, less important, and I decided then and there that I would no longer allow it. The week after Christmas, I tried calling my mother to discuss what happened. I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt, to believe there was some explanation beyond simple favoritism. "Mom, can we talk about Christmas?" The kids were really hurt by the difference in gifts. Her response was dismissive. "Samantha, you're overreacting as usual. The children got lovely gifts appropriate for their ages. Rebecca's children simply had different needs." When I pointed out that she had suggested the modest gift limit, she sighed dramatically. "I didn't realize you were counting dollars so carefully. If you and Greg are having money problems, you should just say so instead of making everyone else feel guilty." That conversation set the tone for Rebecca's response when I approached her a few days later. "You're being dramatic, Sam," she said. "Mom loves all her grandchildren equally. It's not her fault your kids are easier to shop for. Maybe if you let them do more activities like Zoe and Mason, they'd need more expensive things too." Their responses left me feeling gaslit and frustrated. Was I overreacting? I began paying closer attention to family financial discussions, keeping notes in a small journal I hid in my desk drawer. At a family dinner in February, Rebecca casually mentioned that Zoe and Mason's private school was raising tuition again. "It's so expensive," she complained. "Almost $25,000 per child now." "Don't worry about it," my mother said soothingly. "We've got it covered, just like always." I nearly choked on my water. "You pay their tuition?" I asked, unable to hide my shock. My mother looked annoyed at my question. "We help out. It's a financial stretch for Rebecca and Tyler." Later that evening, I overheard Rebecca thanking my mother for the Hawaii trip. When I inquired about it, Rebecca smiled smugly. "Mom and Dad are sending us to Hawaii this summer. They know how hard Tyler works, and we deserve a break." The revelations continued. At a Sunday brunch in March, my father mentioned offhandedly that they had recently paid off Rebecca's car. "Richard," my mother snapped, "that's private." When I applied for a small business loan to start a tutoring service the previous year, I had asked my parents if they would co-sign since my credit wasn't strong enough. They had refused, citing financial concerns, yet I discovered through a chance comment that they had co-signed on Rebecca's mortgage for her luxury home. In April, I visited my Aunt Margaret, my mother's sister who lived in a neighboring town. I hadn't planned to discuss family dynamics, but after a few glasses of wine, the conversation turned to childhood memories. "Your mother always had a special bond with Rebecca," Aunt Margaret said carefully. "I used to worry about you, always trying so hard to please Diana." "Did she treat us differently? I'm not imagining it, am I?" I asked. Aunt Margaret sighed. "No, honey, you're not imagining it. I called her out on it once, years ago. She got defensive and didn't speak to me for months. Some mothers just connect more with one child. It doesn't make it right." When my father had a minor health scare in May, I drove him home from the hospital. Alone in the car, I decided to ask him directly. "Dad, can I ask you something? Why does Mom favor Rebecca so much?" He was silent for so long I thought he might not answer. Finally, he spoke, his voice tired. "Your mother. She sees herself in Rebecca. The social butterfly, the charmer. You remind her too much of her own mother, who was practical and straightforward. It's not fair, but I don't think she even realizes she's doing it." "And you never said anything?" He looked out the window. "I should have. But your mother controls our finances. Always has. I gave up that fight a long time ago." He paused. "I'm sorry, Samantha." Over the next few months, I meticulously documented every instance of financial disparity I could find or remember. I created a spreadsheet detailing gifts, support, and opportunities provided to Rebecca's family versus mine. The total was staggering: approximately $200,000 in gifts and financial support to Rebecca's family over just the past 5 years. The final breaking point came in June when I was helping my father look for a misplaced prescription at my parents' house. My mother was out shopping with Rebecca. In their home office, I accidentally knocked over a folder labeled Grandchildren. Inside were detailed trust fund documents for Zoe and Mason, established years ago with substantial initial deposits and regular contributions. There was nothing for Emma and Lucas. Nothing at all. I took photos of the documents with shaking hands, knowing I had found the evidence I needed. This wasn't just casual favoritism. It was a systematic pattern that would affect not just me, but my children's futures as well. Despite everything I had discovered, I wanted to give my mother one last chance to explain herself. I still held on to the hope that somehow there was a justification I hadn't considered, Or perhaps she simply didn't realize the extent of her favoritism. I invited her to lunch at a quiet restaurant in early July, away from the rest of the family. She arrived looking annoyed, checking her watch repeatedly. "I can only stay for an hour," she said as she sat down. "Rebecca needs help picking out new curtains for her living room." I took a deep breath. "Mom, I wanted to talk to you about something important. I've noticed some patterns in how you treat Rebecca's family compared to mine." "Not this again," she sighed. "Samantha, when will you outgrow this jealousy of your sister?" "It's not jealousy, Mom, it's about fairness. I know about the trust funds for Zoe and Mason. I know about the tuition payments, the vacations, the mortgage." Her face changed, hardening into defensive anger. "You've been snooping through our financial affairs? That's completely inappropriate." "I haven't been snooping. These things have come up in conversation, but you've been hiding them deliberately, haven't you? Like suggesting modest Christmas gifts while planning to give Zoe and Mason iPhones." She smoothed her napkin on her lap. "We help Rebecca because she needs more assistance. Her children have more expensive interests. Their school is preparing them for better colleges. And my children don't deserve the same opportunities?" My voice cracked with emotion. "Your children are different. More like you, practical. They don't need the same things." The conversation escalated as I listed the disparities I had documented. My mother's denials gradually transformed into justifications, and finally a brutal honesty I wasn't prepared for. "You were always the difficult child, Samantha," she said coldly. "Always questioning, always challenging. Rebecca understood how to be a proper daughter. She respects our decisions and appreciates what we do for her. So, this is punishment? For not being compliant enough?" She picked up her water glass, her hand perfectly steady. "It's not punishment. I simply connect more with Rebecca and her family. I always have. I shouldn't have to apologize for that." Tears burned in my eyes. "And my children? Do they deserve to be treated as less valuable than their cousins?" "Don't be so dramatic. They'll be fine. You and Greg chose your lifestyle. You could have pursued better careers, lived in a better neighborhood. Those were your choices. We've never asked you for money, Mom. We've been independent. All I'm asking for is equal treatment for my children." Her eyes were cold. "Well, I've raised my children. How I spend my money now is my business. If you can't accept things as they are, perhaps you shouldn't come around so much anymore." The ultimatum hung in the air between us. I stared at this woman, my mother, suddenly seeing her clearly for perhaps the first time in my life. "I need to go," she said, rising from her chair. "Think about what matters more to you, your pride or your family." I sat alone in the restaurant for nearly an hour after she left, tears streaming down my face. When I finally made it to the parking lot, I broke down completely, sobbing against the steering wheel of my car. That evening, I told Greg everything. He listened in shocked silence, then exploded with anger I rarely saw from him. "This is abuse, Sam, what she's doing to you, to our kids. It's emotional abuse." I suggested family therapy to her. She laughed. "Of course she did," he said bitterly. "That would require her to acknowledge the problem." The next day, I received a scathing text from Rebecca. "How dare you upset Mom like that?" She was crying all evening. "You've always been jealous of me, but trying to guilt Mom about helping my family is a new low. Stop trying to create drama just because your life didn't turn out the way you wanted." For the first time, I didn't respond to her attack or try to defend myself. Instead, I made a difficult decision. I would step back from family gatherings for a while. For my mental health and for my children's sense of self-worth. "We need a break," I told Greg. "I can't keep exposing Emma and Lucas to this dynamic." In the weeks that followed, my mother turned other family members against me with her version of events. Cousins and aunts called to tell me I was being selfish and ungrateful. Only Aunt Margaret stood firmly in my corner. "Stand your ground, Samantha," she said. "Diana has gotten away with this behavior for too long. If you've ever had to make the heartbreaking decision to step back from toxic family members, let me know in the comments." It was the hardest choice I've ever made, but as you'll see, sometimes distance brings unexpected clarity and allies from places you'd never expect. For 3 months, we maintained minimal contact with my parents and Rebecca's family. We declined Sunday dinners and weekend barbecues. Instead, we focused on creating a positive environment for Emma and Lucas, filling our weekends with hiking trips, community events, and simple pleasures that didn't require much money but created lasting memories. Then, in mid-October, I received an unexpected call from my father. "Can we meet somewhere private?" he asked, his voice strained. "There are some things you should know." We arranged to meet at a coffee shop the following day. When he arrived, I was shocked by his appearance. He had lost weight, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. "Dad, are you okay?" I asked as he sat down across from me. "Not really." He placed a manila envelope on the table. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since our talk in the car, about my role in all this, about the kind of father and grandfather I've been. Or haven't been." He pushed the envelope toward me. "Your mother doesn't know I'm here. She doesn't know I found these." Inside the envelope were bank statements, investment reports, and trust documents. As I flipped through them, my confusion grew. "I don't understand. These show accounts I've never heard of." My father's voice was low. "When your maternal grandparents died 15 years ago, they left a substantial inheritance, over $2 million. I looked up sharply. "What?" "But Mom always said they left barely enough to cover their funeral expenses." That was a lie. Diana received everything and kept it secret. She set up separate accounts that I wasn't supposed to know about. I suspected something over the years, but I never had proof until recently. "How did you find out?" He rubbed his face tiredly. "I've been having some health issues I haven't told anyone about. Heart problems. When I updated my will, I started looking more carefully at our finances." Diana was evasive, so I hired a financial investigator. The documents revealed a shocking truth. My mother had been maintaining separate financial accounts for years, diverting significant sums to Rebecca and her family, while claiming financial hardship to the rest of us. "There's more," my father continued. "Diana has a shopping addiction she's hidden for years. Designer clothes, jewelry, expensive lunches. But she's also been extraordinarily generous with Rebecca. The trust funds for Zoe and Mason hold over $100,000 each already. College funds, investment accounts, and Rebecca knows about this?" He nodded. "She's been complicit. Some of these documents required her signature. Why are you showing me this now, Dad?" His eyes welled with tears. "Because I'm running out of time, Samantha. My heart condition is worse than I let on. I might need surgery soon, and I needed to make this right before." He trailed off. "Dad," I whispered, reaching for his hand. "There's something else you should know," he continued. "Diana has been talking about you to the extended family for years, painting you as jealous and unstable. Every time you've achieved something, she's minimized it or found fault. I allowed it to happen, I failed you." I sat back, feeling as though the ground had disappeared beneath me. This wasn't just about money or gifts, it was about a lifetime of manipulation and lies. "What about your retirement?" I asked. "If she's spent so much." "There's enough," he said. "I made some smart investments she doesn't know about, but that's not the point. The point is that this pattern will continue to the next generation if someone doesn't stop it." He reached into his pocket and handed me a USB drive. "Everything is here. Bank statements, trust documents, emails between Diana and Rebecca discussing how to keep you in the dark. I'm not asking you to use this information. That's your decision. But you deserve to have the truth." As I drove home, my mind raced. The scale of the deception was almost incomprehensible. This wasn't just favoritism, it was calculated financial manipulation spanning decades. And it wasn't just directed at me, my children would bear the consequences of this injustice for years to come if nothing changed. When I got home, Greg and I stayed up late reviewing the documents. The evidence was overwhelming. My mother had systematically channeled resources to Rebecca while maintaining a narrative about financial struggles. There were even emails discussing Christmas, confirming that the modest gift suggestion had been a deliberate setup. "She wanted you to spend money you could barely afford while making you feel bad about expecting equal treatment for our kids," Greg said, his voice tight with anger. "This is beyond dysfunctional, Sam. It's cruel." That night, I made a decision. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about protecting my children from a legacy of inequality and emotional manipulation. Something had to change, and I would need to be the one to make it happen. The morning after my meeting with my father, I called a financial advisor recommended by a colleague at work. I needed professional guidance to understand exactly what I was dealing with and what options might be available. Melissa, the advisor, reviewed the documents carefully during our appointment. "This is concerning," she said, looking up from her computer. "Some of these transactions could potentially constitute elder financial abuse, especially if your father wasn't aware of them." Elder abuse? But my mother is the one controlling the money. Elder financial abuse can sometimes involve one spouse controlling assets without the other's knowledge or consent. Especially if your father is in poor health, this raises red flags. She recommended consulting with an attorney, which I did the following week. The attorney confirmed that while the situation was ethically troubling, legal remedies would be complicated and potentially devastating to the family. Before considering legal action, you might want to try addressing this within the family, he advised. Document everything, gather your support system, and approach this strategically. Greg was fully on board with whatever I decided. "I'm with you all the way," he assured me. "This has gone on long enough." I called my father and asked if he would be willing to help document the ongoing financial disparities. He agreed, expressing regret for his years of passivity. "I should have stood up to your mother long ago," he said. "I can't change the past, but I can help fix the future." Over the next few weeks, I created a detailed record. With my father's help, I compiled information about trust funds established for Rebecca's children, but not mine. Educational funding disparities. Loans to Rebecca that were later forgiven. Joint property purchases my parents had made with Rebecca and Tyler. Regular cash gifts to Rebecca's family. Vacations paid for by my parents. Expensive birthday and holiday gifts. I also reached out to extended family members who had experienced similar treatment from my mother. My cousin Allison, my mother's brother's daughter, called me after receiving my email. "I always thought it was just me," she confessed. "Aunt Diana would make these cutting remarks about my career choices, my parenting. She'd shower gifts on other cousins' kids but forget my son's birthday." Two of my aunts also shared stories of Diana's manipulative behavior over the years. A pattern emerged of my mother cultivating favorites and isolating those who questioned her decisions. "She triangulates people," my Aunt Margaret explained. "She tells different stories to different family members, then sits back and watches the conflict unfold." With this broader support network forming, I faced a difficult decision: how to involve Emma and Lucas in what was happening. After consulting with a family therapist, Greg and I decided to have an age-appropriate conversation with them. "You know how sometimes things don't seem fair between you and your cousins?" I began carefully. Emma nodded immediately. "Like the phones at Christmas." "Exactly. We've discovered that Grandma has been treating your cousins differently for a long time. It's not because Zoe and Mason are better or because you did anything wrong. It's an adult problem that we're working to fix." Lucas looked confused. "But Grandma loves us, right?" Greg pulled him close. "Of course she does, buddy. But sometimes adults don't act fairly, even when they should know better. We're telling you this because we want you to know that you deserve to be treated with the same love and respect as your cousins," I added. "And we're going to make sure that happens." It was a difficult conversation, but I felt it was important for them to understand that the disparity wasn't their fault and that we were taking steps to address it. As my support network grew, I connected with other family members who had been sidelined by my mother's behavior. Together, we planned to address the issue at the upcoming family reunion, an annual gathering at my parents' vacation home where the entire extended family would be present. "We need to be strategic," I told Greg as we prepared. "This isn't about attacking my mother or Rebecca. It's about bringing the truth to light and establishing boundaries for the future." In therapy sessions I had started for myself, I worked through the complex emotions of confronting my mother's lifelong favoritism. The therapist helped me see how the dynamic had shaped my own insecurities and people-pleasing tendencies. "You're not just doing this for your children," she pointed out. "You're also breaking a pattern that has affected your entire life." As the date of the family reunion approached, I felt a strange mixture of dread and determination. The evidence was irrefutable. The support network was in place. All that remained was the confrontation itself and whatever would follow. The last weekend in August found us driving to my parents' vacation home in the mountains. This property, a sprawling cedar cabin overlooking a lake, had been the site of family gatherings for decades. I felt a knot in my stomach as we pulled into the gravel driveway. "Are you ready for this?" Greg asked, squeezing my hand. I nodded. As ready as I'll ever be. We had arrived deliberately early to help with setup, which gave me time to take my father aside and confirm he was still supportive of the plan. "I am," he assured me, though he looked nervous. "Diana's behavior has gone unchecked for too long. It's time for honesty." By mid-afternoon, the cabin and surrounding grounds were filled with extended family aunts, uncles, cousins, and their children. My mother was in her element, holding court on the deck, while Rebecca and Tyler arrived fashionably late as usual. Diana greeted me with cool politeness, our estrangement evident in her stiff hug. "Glad you could make it," she said without warmth. Rebecca barely acknowledged me, steering her children away whenever they came near Emma and Lucas. The first day passed without incident. I connected with allies, confirming they would support me during the family meeting traditionally held on the second evening of the reunion. This meeting, ostensibly to discuss family news and plans, had long been my mother's platform for praising Rebecca's achievements and subtly diminishing everyone else's. That evening, I barely slept, rehearsing what I would say and anticipating possible reactions. By morning, I felt surprisingly calm. The truth was on my side, and for once, I wasn't alone in facing my mother. After a day of swimming, hiking, and group activities, everyone gathered in the large living room for the family meeting. About 30 people squeezed onto couches, chairs, and cushions on the floor. My mother took her usual position by the fireplace, commanding attention. "Welcome everyone to our annual family gathering," she began. "As always, we have so much to celebrate this year." What followed was the usual recitation of Rebecca's family's accomplishments, Zoe's academic awards, Mason's sporting achievements, Tyler's promotion, their planned renovation of their already luxurious home. "And of course," my mother continued, "we're so proud to announce that we've secured spots for Zoe and Mason at Lakeside Academy, one of the most prestigious prep schools in the state." Murmurs of congratulations filled the room. I caught my father's eye, and he nodded slightly. As my mother finished her speech, she asked if anyone else had news to share. This was typically a formality. She rarely showed much interest in updates from other family members. "I have something I'd like to discuss," I said, rising from my seat. My mother's smile tightened. "Of course, Samantha. Keep it brief, though. We still have dessert to serve." I moved to the center of the room, my heart pounding. I had brought a folder with copies of financial documents, which I now placed on the coffee table. For years, I've struggled to understand the disparities in how different branches of our family are treated, I began. I tried to address this privately, but that approach was dismissed. So I think it's time we all have an honest conversation about fairness in our family. Rebecca immediately stood up. "Is this really necessary? You're going to ruin the reunion with your jealousy issues?" "Please sit down, Rebecca," my father said firmly, surprising everyone. "Let Samantha speak." I distributed copies of a summary document I had prepared, showing the financial support provided to Rebecca's family compared to others. "What I've discovered goes beyond normal parental support," I continued. "It reveals a pattern of systematic favoritism that affects not just me and my children, but others in this room as well." My mother's face had turned pale. "This is absolutely inappropriate. You have no right to discuss our private financial matters. When those private financial matters create a hierarchy within the family, they become everyone's concern," I replied. "When you established trust funds for Zoe and Mason but nothing for Emma and Lucas, that became my concern. When you suggested modest Christmas gifts while secretly planning expensive presents for Rebecca's children, that became my concern." Murmurs spread through the room as relatives reviewed the documents. "Is this true, Diana?" asked my mother's sister, Aunt Margaret. "Did you really spend this much on Rebecca's family while telling Samantha you couldn't help with her children's activities?" "This is being taken completely out of context," my mother insisted. "Rebecca's family has different needs." "Different needs or different value in your eyes?" I asked quietly. Rebecca stood again, her face flushed with anger. "This is ridiculous. Mom and Dad can spend their money however they want. It's not our fault that you and Greg can't provide properly for your children." "That's enough," my father said, standing up. He looked older than I'd ever seen him, but there was a strength in his voice that had been missing for years. "I've allowed this situation to continue for too long by staying silent. The room fell completely quiet. Everything Samantha has presented is true, he continued. There has been a pattern of financial favoritism toward Rebecca and her family. There was a substantial inheritance from Diana's parents that was never disclosed to the family, and I bear responsibility for not stopping this sooner. My mother stared at him in shock. Richard, what are you doing? I'm telling the truth, Diana. Finally. What followed was something I never expected. Other family members began sharing their own experiences of Diana's manipulative behavior. Cousin Allison described how my mother had offered to help with her son's medical bills, then rescinded the offer when Allison disagreed with her about something trivial. An uncle revealed how Diana had spread rumors about his wife to other family members. Aunt Margaret detailed years of Diana trying to create divisions among the siblings. Throughout it all, my mother sat rigid with anger, while Rebecca repeatedly tried to interrupt, each time being asked by various family members to wait her turn. The most surprising moment came when Zoe, Rebecca's 12-year-old daughter, spoke up. Is it true that you never helped Emma and Lucas with anything, Grandma? Not even their school stuff? She asked, her young face troubled. You always told us we were your favorite grandchildren, but that doesn't seem very nice. Rebecca immediately stood and grabbed Zoe's arm. We're leaving. This has become a circus. She motioned to Tyler and Mason. Now, as they hurried from the room, my mother finally spoke. I have never been so insulted in my life. If this is how this family treats me after everything I've done, perhaps this will be the last reunion I host. Diana, my father said gently, this isn't an attack. It's a request for fairness and honesty going forward. I have nothing to apologize for, she said, rising to her feet. Nothing. She stormed out of the room, leaving a heavy silence behind. My Uncle Charles, the eldest family member present, cleared his throat. Well, that was long overdue. Diana has been pulling strings in this family for decades. Thank you, Samantha, for having the courage to address it. As the meeting broke up, various relatives approached to express support. Even those who had been distant in recent months seemed to understand the situation more clearly now. My father hugged me tightly. I'm proud of you, he whispered. It won't be easy from here, but it was the right thing to do. That night, as Greg and I prepared for bed in our guest room, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and relief. Do you regret it? Greg asked. No, I said after a moment's reflection. It needed to happen, for Emma and Lucas, for me, even for Zoe and Mason, who are being raised in a bubble of entitlement and favoritism. The reunion ended a day early, with many families departing after breakfast the next morning. My mother remained in her bedroom, refusing to come out. Rebecca and her family had left immediately after the confrontation. As we drove home, Emma asked, Did we do something wrong, Mom? Is that why everyone was upset? No, sweetheart, I assured her. Sometimes adults have disagreements that need to be resolved, but it has nothing to do with anything you or Lucas did wrong. In fact, things might start to get better now. I didn't know then how right I would be. The days following the family reunion were eerily quiet. No angry phone calls from my mother, no text messages from Rebecca. It was as if a storm had passed, leaving an uncertain calm in its wake. A week later, my father called to tell me he had moved into the guest house on their property. I'm separating my finances from your mother's, he explained. It's something I should have done years ago. I've consulted with an attorney to ensure everything is above board. How is she taking it? I asked. Not well, he admitted. She's convinced this is all a conspiracy against her. She's tried to call Rebecca several times, but apparently Tyler has intervened. He was quite shaken by the revelations at the reunion. Over the next few weeks, I received calls and emails from extended family members who had been at the reunion. My cousin Allison invited our family to her son's birthday party, the first such invitation we'd received in years. My Aunt Patricia, who had always been distant, reached out to apologize for believing negative things my mother had said about me. Diana has always been skilled at manipulating people, she said. I should have seen through it sooner. My father followed through on his promise to establish equal trust funds for Emma and Lucas, using money from his separate savings. He also set up college funds for them, equivalent to what had been established for Zoe and Mason. I can't change the past, he told me, but I can try to create some balance going forward. My mother, meanwhile, attempted to control the narrative by calling various family members with her version of events. According to my Aunt Margaret, Diana claimed I had ambushed her at the reunion out of jealousy and greed. The problem is, Margaret told me, no one's buying it anymore. The evidence was too clear, and too many people have experienced Diana's manipulations firsthand. 3 weeks after the reunion, I was surprised to find Rebecca at my door one afternoon while the children were at school. "Can I come in?" she asked, looking uncomfortable. I hesitated, then nodded, leading her to the kitchen where I offered her coffee. "Tyler and I have been doing a lot of talking," she began after a moment of awkward silence. "About the reunion, about Mom's behavior, about our role in all this." She stared into her coffee cup. "I always knew Mom favored me. It was obvious even when we were kids, but I told myself it was because I was the oldest, or because I made choices she approved of." "You did benefit from it," I pointed out. "Yes," she admitted. "And I didn't question it because it was convenient not to. Tyler is. He's pretty upset with me. He didn't realize the extent of the favoritism, especially regarding the children. He thinks we've been teaching Zoe and Mason the wrong values." "And what do you think?" I asked. She sighed. "I think he's right. I think I've been so focused on maintaining my position as Mom's favorite that I didn't consider how it affected you or your kids. Or even my own kids, who are growing up thinking they deserve special treatment just for existing." It wasn't a full apology, but it was more self-awareness than I'd ever seen from Rebecca. "So what now?" I asked. "I don't know exactly. Tyler and I are going to start family therapy, and we're declining Mom's financial help going forward. We don't need it, we never did." It just became expected. Before she left, she added, "I don't expect us to suddenly be best friends, Samantha. There's too much history. But maybe we can work towards something healthier for the kids' sake." Over the next few months, a new family dynamic began to emerge. My father became more actively involved with Emma and Lucas, taking them fishing, helping with school projects, and generally being the grandfather they had deserved all along. As Thanksgiving approached, the question of holiday gatherings loomed large. Traditionally, everyone gathered at my parents' house for an elaborate dinner orchestrated by my mother. This year, my father suggested an alternative. "What if we did Thanksgiving at a neutral location?" he proposed during a family conference call that included me, Rebecca, and our aunts and uncles. "Perhaps the community center? Everyone could contribute a dish, and we could make it more casual." My mother refused to participate in these discussions, and announced she would be spending Thanksgiving alone, a martyrdom gesture that would have generated sympathy in the past, but now met with collective shrugs. "She's expecting everyone to beg her to reconsider," my Aunt Margaret observed. "She doesn't realize that the dynamics have changed." The community center Thanksgiving was remarkably pleasant without my mother's controlling presence. The meal was a potluck, with everyone contributing their specialties. The children played together more freely, and conversations flowed more naturally without Diana's tendency to redirect attention to Rebecca's family. Most surprisingly, Rebecca made an effort to connect with Emma and Lucas, bringing games she thought they might enjoy and asking about their interests. "They're good kids," she told me as we cleaned up afterward. "I'm sorry I didn't make more effort with them before." By December, it was clear that my mother was not going to acknowledge any wrongdoing or change her behavior. She refused all invitations unless they came with what she called appropriate apologies for the ambush at the reunion. She even sent formal letters to several family members detailing her grievances. "She can't accept that her version of reality isn't the only one anymore," my father explained sadly. "She'd rather be alone than adapt." As difficult as it was, I had to accept that complete reconciliation with my mother might never be possible. The pattern was too entrenched, the denial too deep. But that didn't mean the rest of the family couldn't heal and move forward. With the holiday season approaching, a new question arose: how would we handle Christmas? The answer came from an unexpected source. "Are you sure you want to host?" Greg asked as we hung lights around our modest living room. "It's going to be a lot of work." I smiled, surveying our home. It wasn't as grand as my parents' house, but we had made it cozy and welcoming with simple decorations, a fresh pine tree in the corner, and the aroma of cinnamon and cloves from candles on the mantel. I'm sure, it feels right to start new traditions. A year had passed since the Christmas of the iPhones, a year of difficult conversations, shifting alliances, and gradually healing relationships. Now, on Christmas Eve, we were preparing to host a gathering that would have been unimaginable 12 months ago. The doorbell rang at 4 o'clock. My father stood on the porch, his arms full of carefully wrapped packages. "Merry Christmas," he said, giving me a one-armed hug. "Where are my grandchildren?" Emma and Lucas rushed to greet him, taking his packages and leading him to the tree. In the past year, my father had transformed into the grandfather he had always wanted to be. Free from my mother's controlling influence, he had developed genuine relationships with both sets of grandchildren. "Richard, good to see you," Greg called from the kitchen, where he was putting the finishing touches on dinner. My father had separated from my mother 6 months ago, moving into a small apartment closer to us. The separation had been difficult but necessary, he explained. "I can't spend my remaining years enabling behavior that hurts the people I love." Rebecca and her family arrived 30 minutes later. There had been many challenging conversations between us throughout the year, but we had gradually established a new, more honest relationship. It wasn't perfect. Decades of favoritism and resentment couldn't be erased overnight, but it was healthier than before. Zoe and Mason entered somewhat awkwardly, carrying gifts they had selected themselves. "We picked these out with our allowance," Zoe told Emma proudly, "not Grandma's money." This was a significant change from the previous year. After the reunion confrontation, Tyler had insisted on major changes in their household, including regular allowances for the children based on chores and reasonable spending limits on gifts. "The entitlement stops now," he had declared during a difficult family meeting in September. Rebecca, to her credit, had supported these changes, though she struggled more with the adjustment than her children did. Years of preferential treatment had shaped her expectations in ways that would take time to unlearn. As we gathered around the dining table, I noticed the absence of tension that had characterized our family gatherings in the past. Without my mother's orchestration, conversations flowed naturally between different family members. My father engaged with all his grandchildren equally. Greg and Tyler found common ground discussing home renovation projects. After dinner, we moved to the living room for the gift exchange. This year, everyone had agreed on reasonable spending limits that were actually adhered to. The children received presents of similar value, thoughtfully selected to match their interests. Emma unwrapped a set of professional quality art supplies from her aunt and uncle, her face lighting up with genuine delight. "Thank you. These are exactly what I wanted for my comic book project." Lucas received books about space and astronomy from Rebecca and Tyler, while Zoe and Mason opened the video games and craft supplies we had chosen for them. "See, isn't this better?" my father asked, watching the children's excitement. No one feeling left out or less valued. Rebecca nodded, a touch of sadness in her eyes. "Mom's missing out. I've called her several times, but she refuses to join us unless we do things her way." My mother had chosen to spend Christmas alone rather than participate in a gathering where she couldn't control the narrative. She had sent elaborate gifts to Zoe and Mason directly to their home, bypassing the agreed-upon limits, but Tyler had returned them with a polite but firm note about respecting family decisions. "I hate that she's alone today," I admitted, "but this was her choice. We all invited her." After the gifts were opened and the children were playing with their new treasures, my father took me aside. "I have something to tell you," he said quietly. "My heart condition has improved. The doctors say the reduced stress has made a significant difference." Tears sprang to my eyes. "Dad, that's wonderful news." "I should have made these changes years ago," he said, regret evident in his voice, "for all our sakes." As the evening wound down, Rebecca approached me in the kitchen while I was putting away leftovers. "This was nice," she said, sounding almost surprised. "Different, but nice." "It was," I agreed. "Samantha, I know I haven't properly apologized for my role in all this. It's hard to admit that I benefited from Mom's favoritism for so long, but I am sorry. For the Christmases, the birthdays, the constant comparisons, for not standing up when I should have. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was sincere." And in that moment, I realized that while Rebecca and I might never have the close sister relationship some families enjoyed, we could have something honest and respectful. As everyone prepared to leave, my phone chimed with a text message. To my surprise, it was from my mother. "I hope the children enjoyed their day. Perhaps we could talk soon." It wasn't much, no acknowledgement of wrongdoing. No real indication of change, but it was the first contact she had initiated in months that wasn't accusatory or demanding. I showed the message to Greg after everyone had left. "What do you think?" I asked. "Is it a peace offering or another manipulation?" He considered it thoughtfully. "Hard to say, but you've always been the one to leave the door open for reconciliation. Just make sure there are firm boundaries if you decide to respond." That night, as Greg and I cleaned up the last of the wrapping paper and dishes, I reflected on the extraordinary year behind us. The pain of confronting decades of favoritism, the courage it had taken to speak the truth, the unexpected allies who had emerged, the relationships that had shifted and transformed. "I never imagined last Christmas that we'd end up here," I told Greg as we turned off the lights. "Standing up to my mother was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was worth it. Not just for me, but for Emma and Lucas, for all of us." The path to healing wasn't complete, it might never be, but we had broken a cycle that would have continued to the next generation if left unchallenged. Emma and Lucas would grow up knowing their worth wasn't dependent on comparison to their cousins. And perhaps most surprisingly, Zoe and Mason were learning valuable lessons about fairness and accountability. As for my mother, only time would tell if she could ever truly acknowledge the harm her favoritism had caused and make genuine amends. I had accepted that I couldn't control her choices, I could only control my response to them. I decided that night that I would answer her text after Christmas, leaving the door open for conversation while maintaining the boundaries we had established. Reconciliation, if it came, would need to be built on honesty and equal respect, not on returning to old patterns. Family relationships are messy and complicated, but they're worth fighting for when the fight is for fairness and respect. If you've ever had to stand up to family favoritism, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. Did you find resolution, or are you still working through it? Hit subscribe if this story resonated with you, and share it with someone who might need to hear they're not alone in facing family injustice. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is to insist on the truth, even when it's difficult.